Hello everyone, my name is Lacey Sexton, and this is my PowerPoint presentation on productive and counterproductive behaviors in the workplace. Question 1 asks, how have recent historical events affected the course of research in organizational psychology? Give an example of an event and the resulting outcome. There are many historical events that have affected organizational psychology in the workplace, but the most recent is the COVID-19 pandemic. Due to the COVID-19 outbreak, it has caused a lot of organizations and colleges to have to go remote. With the lack of face-to-face interaction, it has made it difficult for not only students to properly learn how to become an organizational psychologist, but also those who are already organizational psychologists to properly conduct their research. It is common for students to want to learn in person how to learn the content of the courses, and it makes it difficult for that. Because of COVID, it has affected and made it difficult for students to develop good learning habits, which could in result affect them as becoming an organizational psychologist. And if students do not receive the proper education, it could affect their research as well. In regards to current organizational psychologists, it has made it difficult for them to conduct research. Say, for example, face-to-face interaction has been limited, and so that makes it difficult to develop or even get a big enough sample size to really conduct a proper research that could be utilized in the workplace. On a brighter note, this has caused organizational psychologists to learn to develop remote skills and how to utilize or use research remotely instead of just solely relying on face-to-face interaction. And it has caused organizational psychologists to become more innovative and creative when they are trying to conduct research. So in conclusion, the COVID-19 pandemic has caused a restraint, but also has created, ways to benefit and further develop organizational psychologists and conduct research differently. The second question asks, describe the socialization process for graduate students in your program. Is the program successful in socializing and creating job embeddedness? Now, there are a set of stages when an organization is starting to socialize a newcomer, and those are the anticipatory stage, the encounter stage, the change and acquisition stage, and then behavioral outcomes and effective outcomes. For me personally, the anticipatory stage was relatively easy for me regarding it was a Christian school that I knew I was attending, and I knew it matched my beliefs, so it made the anticipatory stage a little bit easier for me to go into. And then when I encountered my first class, I knew I was starting my first day of my master's program, but I was excited. And I was learning more about my professors and how they like to run their course, and it just made me more excited to start my classes and learn about what I'm wanting to become. As I transitioned into the change and acquisition stage, I started receiving feedback from my professors and learning how they were expecting the coursework to be done. And I was getting a lot of positive and encouragement, and it made me more excited to continue, which then in turn I transitioned into the behavioral outcomes. Behavioral outcome stage is where I was feeling more confident in my work, and I was able to kind of transition into the effective outcomes where I can take it into my workplace where I work and kind of use what I'm learning to benefit their company. I feel like the socialization process for this program in general has been relatively positive. I feel that I can be myself, and I have only ever had a positive experience with any of my professors and my fellow students. I feel like each professor has gone out of their way to really make their students feel comfortable in their class, and that they can ask any question that they want without feeling judged or like it was a dumb question. Overall, I feel like that is a really hard thing to come by, especially in a master's program, and I'm really blessed to have a program like this make me feel so comfortable. Question 3 asks, how can an organization reduce or prevent work-family conflict? Work-family conflict is very common and happens all over the world, and it occurs when an employee is struggling to manage both work and family responsibilities. And there are a few ways that an organization can help reduce this. The main way that an organization can help reduce work-family conflict is by implementing work-family policies. And these policies can include like daycare on site, PTO, elder care, exercise. There are a ton of ways that a company can reduce stress and help an employee manage both at-home and work responsibilities. For example, providing daycare on site can help reduce an employee struggling on affording or where to even take their child. Even the drive there and to could be detrimental and can be very hard for a worker to balance taking their kid to daycare and then driving to work in time. And the same goes for elder care. When their parents get older and sometimes falls on them to take care of them, having that opportunity at work to provide those resources on where to, take their mother or dad can help them feel less stress at work. Also, including PTO can help if there is a stressful day and they don't have to worry about taking off and not financially being able to afford to take the day off. Having PTO gives them the availability to, tend to matters at home that need to be dealt with and not having to worry about the repercussions at work. Another way to reduce or prevent work-family conflict is to have a supervisor, or if it's your, boss or leader, whoever it is, show that they are supportive of you and are aware that there can be work or family issues that are going on in your life. And having that support can really help manage the stress of at-home responsibilities and work responsibility stresses. Lastly, having a company be a family supportive organization, meaning that they are not only supporting the employee but also providing benefits for their family as well, can help them feel less stressed and feel like they can provide for not just themselves but their family at their work, which is very important and is a big indicator on why someone would want to work at that company in the first place. Question 4 asks, imagine you have been asked to develop a performance assessment program for employee development. What techniques could you use to adequately evaluate employee performance as comprehensively as possible? Now, this is going to depend on the organization you work for and its employees, so it's going to differ based on what performance and job that they are doing. And it is also going to be measured indirectly by an external assessment. In our textbook, it incorporates Murphy's List, and Murphy's List has a few different ways of how to assess an employee performance. And a few of those are paper pencil testing, job skill testings, and on and off-site job testings. Now, for example, where I work at the Villages in Florida, and there is a position called the lobby host position. And what they do is they greet people when they come in, they open the doors, they direct them to where they need to be directed to. And so one way that they could do an assessment program for their position would be to do those specific job tasks. So say, for example, that they would have one of the lobby hosts perform, opening the door. Are they able to open the door correctly? Are they able to, greet the guests respectfully and how they are wanting, the lobby host to do so? Another way is they stand on their feet for 4 to 5 hours at a time, is to see if they are able to do that without, any complaints, or if they can do it correctly. So after having them do those job skill testings, I would then have their supervisor rate their job performance. And once the supervisor has finished rating their job performance, I would then have the lobby host also rate their job performance and see, how they believe they're doing their job versus how the supervisor is doing their job. And I would also let them include a comment section so they can kind of further note, maybe why were they not doing it correctly, or why do they believe that they were doing their job correctly. Lastly, question 5 asks, what are some possible organizational constraints and how could they lead to counterproductive behaviors? Now, counterproductive work behaviors, also known as CWB, is when an employee engages themselves in behaviors that have the intent of harming not only the organization, but also its employees. There are a few types of these behaviors that I will discuss, and some of those are, being late to work, being rude to your coworkers, theft, possible sexual harassment, and also drug or alcohol abuse during work. There are also a few reasons as to why an employee would even engage in counterproductive work behaviors, and our textbook has come to the conclusion that there are 2 types of categories. And those are person-based and situation-based. Person-based is due to the individual, and it is possible that they might have some underlying, mental conditions or, just personality traits that cause them to behave that way. So say, for example, someone may be more prone to anger, which makes them lash out more than another employee, or they could be, have a lack of self-control, which causes them to also perform these behaviors. The second is a situation-based, which is all dependent on the situation that person is in. So say, for example, a situation where their supervisor is not at work or around them, then they might, fall into wanting to have these counterproductive behaviors such as, not doing their work, time thief, or possibly being rude to their coworkers because they feel like they don't have anyone watching them, so they can kind of have these behaviors and not get in trouble for it. Another example could be if that organization does not have a set of standards for their employees to follow, it could make it difficult for them to understand what are productive and counterproductive behaviors in that particular company. So not having those standards can make it difficult and cause them to act that way, even though they might not intentionally meaning to. But for the most part, those behaviors are with the intent of wanting to harm the organization, and with the lack of supervision causes them to think it's okay. Now, if they start combining both the person-based and situation-based, say that there's a lack of supervision and that person has a trouble of, lack of self-control, then they could, take things further and possibly, start, smoking on the job or doing drugs or alcohol and pushing their limits that way because they are not having that supervision and they are already struggling with a lack of self-control. So all of these organizational constraints can lead to counterproductive behaviors in the workplace.